Kazuma Kiryu, the legendary Dragon of Dojima, a living legend. He's been through it all. Spent 25 years in prison to take a fall for his brother. Battled the Dragon of Kansai. Fought a CIA agent. You get the point. But every legend needs a bride by his side. It can't just be explosions and dudes tearing their shirts off. A legend needs a little love in his life. So does Kiryu have that? Has he ever had that? Kiryu is a complicated man. A lot of Yakuza fans like to call Kiryu a virgin, and yeah, I know it's a joke, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. No, the correct word to use to describe Kiryu would be celibate, specifically voluntarily celibate. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Kiryu is celibate. And to examine why that's the case, we have to turn the clock back in time to when Kiryu had his first love. Kiryu's first love interest is a glorified cardboard cutout of a character. Honestly, I hesitate to even call her a character because she's barely a character. She serves almost solely as a plot device in Yakuza 1, and she doesn't even make an on-screen appearance in Yakuza 0. She's merely mentioned in what's virtually a throwaway line.
今度はユミちゃんにも会ってみたいな。歓迎するわよ。
あいつはまだ学生だよ。
I'm talking about Yumi Sawamura. Now, given everything I just told you, it shouldn't be surprising that there isn't really an answer as to why Kiryu is in love with Yumi. You could very much say that he loves her because she's the love interest, a label she's pretty much defined by. Okay, in all seriousness, the only details we're given about Yumi and Kiryu's history is that they grew up in the same orphanage, and that in the mid-90s he bought her a ring. The latter is portrayed in the most boring section of Yakuza Kiwami. Aside from those two pieces of information, nothing else in relation to Kiryu's romantic connection to Yumi is referenced or told to us. You could say that Yokoyama-san had an epiphany while he was writing Infinite Wealth when he realized that Kiryu's first love interest was barely a character. So let's try to give her a little bit more substance by making a callback to that ring Kiryu bought for her. And yeah, you can see what they were trying to do here, but sadly this scene does not strike a chord in any way whatsoever, for reasons previously stated. But hey, we all gotta start somewhere, right? I mean, do you remember who your first crush was? I do. Her name started with the letter S. Maybe she's watching this video, you never know. If you are, I feel like we could have been really good friends, and I really regret the fact that I didn't talk to you more in our last year of high school. At one point, yeah, I had feelings for you. I had feelings that you could describe as romantic, and initially, yeah, you were the first time I ever had feelings. Wait, we're getting a little bit off topic here. My deepest apologies for that. Let's talk about Kiryu's second love interest. Known as the Yakuza Huntress, Kaoru Sayama is one of the best cops in the Osaka police force. She's an incredibly determined and intelligent person who refuses to back down from her goals once she's set on them. Technologically proficient and physically strong, her most passionate objective in life is finding out the truth about her birth parents, regardless of how difficult or painful that discovery might be. Yeah, that's right, she's an orphanage, but unlike Kiryu, she found her way into the police force instead of organized crime to be closer to her parents in one way or another. Back when she was a teen, Sayama overheard a part of a phone call where her adoptive mother blamed the Tojo clan for Sayama losing her parents. Due to overhearing this call, Sayama became determined to discover what happened to her birth parents and how the Yakuza, specifically the Tojo clan, was connected to it. This is why she initially joined the Osaka police force. As we already know, Kiryu is an orphan. After his parents were killed by his then-to-be adoptive father, he spent the first few years of his life in an orphanage. After some time, he eventually came to idealize the Yakuza, and started to desperately express his desire to join the Yakuza to his then-to-be adoptive father. Eventually, he does actually join the Yakuza, the Tojo clan to be specific. But a few years before he does that, on the fateful day that the Tojo clan decided to do a raid on their longtime rival, the Jingwan Mafia, with Shintaro Kazuma leading it, Kiryu finds himself in a precarious situation after making the stupid decision to follow Kazuma a few moments before he begins the raid. While there, Kiryu interrupts Kazuma's negotiations with two Jingwan Mafia members, walking in on them with a lead pipe. In the confusion caused by Kiryu's sudden appearance, Kazuma is forced to protect Kiryu by killing the Jingwan Mafia boss, who had thought Kazuma betrayed them because he thought Kiryu was one of Kazuma's men. Little did Kiryu know that this would have some sort of impact on his future love interest.
どっちかが死ぬまで勝負は終わらへんわい。くさげ、覚えとけ。勝負はまだ終わっとらんでい。
本部内の全員連行や。
はいはい。
桐生一馬さんですね。
そうだ。
府警4課の佐山薫です。あなたを傷害の現行犯で逮捕します。
The two meet each other for the first time when Sayama arrests, quote-unquote, Kiryu. The initial meeting is so cold and fast that Kiryu isn't even able to get a single word in, and as soon as his hands are in those cuffs, they hit the road.
俺だけどこへ連れてくんだ。おい、聞いてんのか。
ここまで来ればもう大丈夫だわ。
どういうことだ。
傷害罪は表向きの口実。あなたの身辺保護を頼まれたのよ。
身辺保護。
逃げようとしたら即座に逮捕するわ。
Okay, so it's pretty obvious from the get-go that these two are going to develop feelings for each other. All the classic markers of a rom-com are present in this story. First off, the opposites attract trope is utilized. It's kind of self-explanatory, but basically what that trope is when two characters who are complete opposites, whether it be in personality, position in society, or even species, these characters just somehow happen to fall in love and become a couple. A dragon and a donkey? Sure thing. A cop and a Yakuza? That's Sayama and Kiryu. The moment these two are paired together, the writing is on the wall for this to be a romantic relationship. Is it going to be a romantic relationship that works out in the end? Let's find out.
せろ。どこを撃たれた。
大したことないわ。
弾丸が貫通してない。このままじゃ危険だ。おい、近くの病院はどこだ。
そうって。
After Sayama is shot, she tells Kiryu to take her to a bar in Sotenbori called Aoi, the bar her adoptive mother owns. After which, Sayama is left with her adoptive mother, who pulls the bullet from her shoulder and patches up her wounds, before letting her sleep to recover. Now, they don't know who the sniper was. They have a couple of ideas on who it was, but they eventually come to the conclusion that Sotenbori isn't safe and they need to go to Kamurocho.
Oh.
どうしたんだ。
大丈夫よ。ちょっとめまいがしただけ。
まだ熱が引いてないんだな。
大丈夫って言ってるでしょ。ほっといてよ。
Okay, isn't it a little early to be getting intimate? This relationship seems to be progressing really fast, or maybe it's just Kiryu's lack of social awareness. Nonetheless, Kiryu takes her to the old bar he used to frequent for recuperation.
ここはどこ？
俺の馴染みの店だったところだ。
そう
After feeling better, Sayama takes a shower.
思ったんだけど、隣の店にシャワーがあったから勝手に使わせてもらったわ。
そうか。
多分昔風俗店だったんでしょ。狭いフロアにあんなにシャワールームを設置して、関西なら一発で検挙だわね。
体はもう大丈夫なのか？
やっと熱が引いたわ。傷口ももう痛まなくなったし、これでいつものように動けるわ。
まだ無理しない方がいい。
Now, after getting out of the shower, she unwraps her towel in front of Kiryu. She is literally butt naked in front of Kiryu in this scene. These two barely know each other, and within the space of a few hours, Kiryu is holding her in his arms, and Sayama has no problem being naked, vajayjay and bare ass on display in front of Kiryu. Yeah, I don't think you'd be wrong if you said that a sort of physical intimacy has been established at this point. Anyway, relationship escalation aside, Kiryu, like the gentleman that he is, turns away after seeing her naked out of respect because, you know, he isn't a pervert, and being a pervert is bad. A lesson Hideo Kojima needs to learn. Anywho, Sayama tells Kiryu that her obsession with the Tojo clan stems from her suspicion that they killed her birth parents.
ママが話していた通り、私は本当の親を知らないまま育ってきたの。小さい頃から病気で死んだと聞かされていたけど、ママが何か隠していることは薄々感じてた。そんな時ママが電話で怒鳴っているのを聞いちゃってね。
なんて言ってたんだ？
カオルは登場会のせいで不幸になったってね。
登場会のせいで？
あの時ママは私の過去を知っている人と話をしてたんだと思う。それから十数年、何度となくママにそのことを聞いても何も教えてくれない。そんなこと聞いても幸せになれないって言うばかり。
お前の勘違いってことはないのか？
ママの反応を見ればわかるわ。絶対に何かを隠してる。でもママを問い詰め続けるのは私も辛い。だから警察官になって自分自身で調べる道を選んだの。
お前は両親を登場会に殺されたと思っているのか？
これだけ自分の生い立ちを隠されたらそう推測するのが普通でしょ。
それを確かめるために身辺保護の名目で俺に近づいたってわけか？
相手に手の内がバレちゃ刑事失格よね。
お前の気持ちわからないでもない。
え？
俺にも隠された過去があったんだ。
隠された過去？
ああ。だが俺はそれを知ってしまったことで苦しかった。知らない方が良かったとさえ思った。もしかしたら人間には知らなくてもいい過去があるんじゃないのか。
Kiryu cautions her against digging up a buried past, as he had recently learnt a dark truth about his own past. That dark truth being that his adoptive father murdered his parents. But Sayama is still nonetheless determined to find out the truth. After this point, as Yakuza 2's story continues, the relationship between Kiryu and Sayama progresses. After what's clearly a physical attraction between the two is established, because of their mutual interest in fighting the Omi Alliance and Tojo clan, they spend more time with each other. At some point, Sayama meets Majima.
なんやキリュウちゃん、もう女作ったんかい。この好きこましが。
誤解すんな。
照れることないやんけ。なあ姉ちゃん。
府警第4課主任佐山薫です。よろしく。
府警4課？姉ちゃんデカなんか？キリュウちゃんどないなってんねん。
それより
And at some point, they both find out about the Jingwan Mafia.
ウォン派韓国の組織か？
間違いね
聞いたこともない組織ね。
え。まあ知らなくて当然だ。 日本のヤクザと違って韓国系の組織はマフィア化している。表立ってダイヤモンを掲げるような真似は絶対にしない。
Let's talk about the Jingwan Mafia and their connection to Sayama. Basically, in the early 1980s, when Sayama was born, the Jingwan Mafia was a very notorious Korean criminal syndicate in Kamurocho, known for their brutal war against the police and the Tojo clan. Sayama's mother at one point was the wife of the Jingwan Mafia boss at the time. This conflict reaches its climax in an event known as the Jingwan Massacre. During a raid on the Jingwan Mafia by the Dojima family, Sayama's birth mother, caught in the middle of the conflict between the two groups, tried to jump out of a window, only to be stopped by who would eventually become Sayama's father, Jiro Kawara. With the aim of helping her hide from the Jingwan Mafia and the Dojima family, Kawara took Sayama's mother out of Kamurocho and snuck her down to southern Japan in the Kansai region. 6 months after the Jingwan massacre, Sayama's mother reunited with and married Kawara and gave birth to Sayama. At some point after her birth, Kawara attempted to turn down a law enforcement job opportunity in Hong Kong as he believed it would leave his family vulnerable, but was ultimately convinced by Sayama's mother to accept the offer for his career, as she didn't want to burden him. However, Sayama's mother was murdered by a Jingwan assailant from mainland Korea for revenge reasons, after Kawara departed to Hong Kong, which was ultimately how Sayama was left with an adoptive mother. None of this backstory is revealed to Sayama until the latter half of Yakuza 2, so the whole game up until that point is Sayama and Kiryu trying to find where each puzzle piece fits in the grand conspiracy/mystery they're both involved in. Along the way on that journey, Sayama and Kiryu meet with Date, who learned after some investigating that one of Sayama's superiors, an Osaka PD investigator named Besho, was the one who allowed the Jingwan massacre to happen. With this revelation in mind, Sayama then decides that they should go back to Osaka to do some further investigating. But at this point in the story, Kiryu still has some Yakuza shit to deal with in their current location, Kamurocho.
返してくれてると思ってた。でも自分は裏でヤクザとつるんでたなんて。あなたには悪いけど、まず最初に府警に行ってもらうわ。人言派の事件を調べるのが先よ。
勝手にやれ。俺は合田会長を探す。
So he wants to stay in Kamurocho. This sparks a not so great reaction from Sayama. Because Kiryu is still officially in protective custody of Sayama, remember, she's a cop, she forces his ass to go along with her to Osaka. But what Kiryu didn't know in that moment of frustration is that this trip to Osaka would lead up to the specific moment when the two of them fall in love with each other. As soon as they arrive in Osaka, they meet Besho.
今日付で身辺保護の任務は終わりや。命令や。
理由を言ってください。
人言派が絡んでるとなりゃ、かなりの危険が伴う。
私が女だからですか。
ちゃう。そんなこと言うとるんやないわ。4課の捜査範囲から外れたってだけや。
今さらそんなこと言わないでください。犯罪者を取り締まる、それが私の仕事です。
今回の事件はヤクザ狩りのようにはいかんのじゃ。
相手は同じ人間じゃないですか。
お前は人言派の恐ろしさを知らんからそんなことが言えるんや。あいつら女やろうが子供やろうが手加減せんのんじゃ。
でも私は。
これは命令や言うとるやろ。
あんたら何してんねん。
A bunch of dudes try to harass Sayama, then Kiryu comes to the rescue.
Oi! 何やってる？待ちなさい！
こっちよ。 ごめん。
いやどうしたんだ。
いや、私たちなんか変だなと思ってね。ねえ、今夜空いてる？
Then we get a good old falling in love montage between these two. After that montage, there's a really gorgeous cutscene in which both of them open up to each other more.
いい気分だ。
もうちょっと飲むやろ？買ってくるわ。
悪い。気が利くんだな。
You know, I find it ironic that Kiryu gave Sayama that compliment, given the fact that he was forced to go on this trip with Sayama after being held at gunpoint. That's not what I'd call considerate, but maybe Kiryu is a little in his feelings right now, and because of that, he forgot about being held at gunpoint. Anywho, Kiryu tells Sayama that she shouldn't hide her real self, that the most important part of life is to be yourself.
無理して褒めたってビール以外出てこんよ。
別に無理したわけじゃねえよ。
何言うてんの？うちはね、そういうおだてとかお世辞は好きちゃうし。
本当に素直にそう思っただけだ。
せやからさっきも言うたけど、褒めても何も出てきえへんよ。
そういうところは案外可愛いんだな。
なうちは今まで優しいなんて言われたこともないし、可愛いなんて言われたこともない。男勝りで現場でもうちが乗り込んだらみんな引いてるわ。せやからあんたが言うてることが嘘やってことくらい分かってるし、そんな言葉言うてもらうためにここに連れてきたわけやな。
そいつらには分からねえだけなのさ。
何が？
お前が刑事である以前に女だってことがさ。周りが何て言おうと気にするな。人間、自分らしくいることが一番大切なんじゃねえのか。
そりゃそうやけど。
今のお前は周り気にして突っ張ることに必死で自分自身を見失っちまってるんじゃねえのか。世の中にはお前のいいところを大切にしてくれるやつだってきっといるはずだ。どうした？
Now, the first question I asked myself after rewatching this specific cutscene was, what exactly would compel Kiryu to give Sayama this advice? Is he speaking from personal experience? Did Kiryu grow up his whole life hiding the real version of himself? Judging by his portrayal in Yakuza 0, I'd say the answer to that second question is no. So he probably isn't speaking from personal experience, but maybe it's because of what he's observed in other people throughout his life. Like Nishiki, for example? Yeah, that is probably where Kiryu is coming from.
ああ、そうだな。
え？
俺はお前の過去の全ては知らねえ。でも俺は誰が何と言おうと本当のお前は優しい人間だって思ってるぜ。おせっかいだったかもしれねえが一人の男の意見として覚えておいてくれ。
It's just one man's opinion, and Kiryu wouldn't be wrong with that statement, except he's not telling the whole story. It's one man's very biased opinion. Biased in what way? Well, he's obviously caught feelings. He's obviously in love. And yeah, with that being the case, the question we must then ask ourselves is why he's falling in love with Sayama. Why is he falling in love with Sayama? Why is Kiryu attracted to Sayama? It's obviously not just a physical attraction. It's a little bit deeper than that. He's falling in love with Sayama mainly because of her qualities as a person. Specifically, she has qualities that Kiryu lacks but admires. Let me explain. Sometimes people fall in love with those that truly inspire them and challenge them to be the person they want to become. Sometimes we fall in love with those that take us out of our comfort zone. Sometimes we fall in love because we believe the other person can complete us with the qualities we lack, and sometimes we fall in love to escape from ourselves and reality. And sometimes we fall in love because it just feels good. I've never been in love before, but what I just read probably describes it both perfectly and eloquently. I think Kiryu is falling in love with Sayama because he really admires her qualities as a person, her tenacity, her supposed kindness, her determination to take initiative. These aren't qualities that Kiryu necessarily lacks, but he's definitely not known for taking initiative. Even as early as in Yakuza 2, he's actively running away from his problems and responsibilities regarding the Tojo clan. I mean, it's the game where he asks Daigo to become the 6th chairman, someone who had no experience whatsoever with such leadership responsibilities. To put it simply, Kiryu likes Sayama because of what he lacks and probably what he wishes he had. And that really shows in this cutscene.
橋の上で待ってるわ。
わかった。
ねえ。ありがとう。
Remember the backstory behind how and when Sayama was born, and how she didn't know about her own backstory until a later point in the game? Yeah, this is that point. After the previous night, Sayama and Kiryu continue their investigation in Osaka. They find out that they have to locate a Jingwan Mafia member named Murai, someone who witnessed the Jingwan massacre. After some confusing bullshit having to do with the board game Shogi, Sayama and Kiryu eventually locate Murai. With some persuasion, Murai details the events that took place on the day of the massacre and tells them the names of the 2 other men who survived, Daejin Kim and Young-min Yi. However, he also says that besides the 3 Jingwan survivors the police knew about, the Jingwan's boss's wife, who's eventually revealed to be Sayama's mother, and her baby also escaped the massacre. As Murai describes what transpired, Kiryu realizes that he was present when all of this occurred. However, before he can elaborate, a group of Jingwan assassins burst in looking to kill Sayama, Kiryu, and Murai. Kiryu and Sayama beat up the assassins, but one of them manages to fatally wound Murai by throwing a knife into his gut.
しっかりして。
After which they all kill themselves by consuming concealed cyanide capsules. Shit's intense, man. Okay, so they're not a couple yet, but it's clear that they're both in love, right? So I'd call what happens next after that their first fight. Kiryu reveals to Sayama that he's essentially the reason why the Jingwan boss was killed. Because when he wasn't supposed to, he followed Shintaro Kazuma to the building where the Jingwan massacre would eventually take place. Because of this grave mistake he made, Kazuma kills the Jingwan boss, and that's when the night began to unravel. Because of his mistakes of the past, Kiryu says Sayama should kill him to avenge her parents.
さようなもんだ。俺を撃たないのか。どんな償いでもすると言ったろ。
かっこつけるのもいい加減にして。親の仇を取らせれば自分が犯した罪が軽くなるとでも思ってんの？罪を償うから俺を殺せだなんて。人はね、そんな簡単に割り切って生きてゆけないのよ。
Who may have died because of him. So that was an interesting but justified reaction from Sayama. She essentially called out Kiryu's lack of maturity because that really isn't an appropriate reaction to finding out you made a grave mistake. It kind of shines a light on Kiryu's savior complex and self-hatred. And he doesn't actually learn anything from this because in later games he would react in the same way whenever he found out that he was, in one way or another, a burden to someone or something. This is a flaw Sayama recognizes. At this point in the story, it's clear that Sayama and Kiryu are very well acquainted with each other. It's really no surprise that their romance is calcified soon after this. So Kiryu is stabbed, but despite that, he walks all the way back to Sayama's adoptive mother's bar, and he eventually finds out that Haruka, his adoptive daughter, has been kidnapped and taken to a place called the Osaka Castle. Kiryu takes it upon himself to go all the way to this place, his stab wound not fully healed yet, and after a whole-ass Tarantino-esque sequence, he eventually rescues Haruka, and Sayama comes to the rescue too. They all go back to the bar Sayama's adoptive mother owns, and find a note left by her adoptive mother stating that Sayama's biological father is still alive and he's in Tokyo. They all drive back to Tokyo, and on the way there, a conversation between Haruka and Sayama is held while Kiryu is asleep. Now, this wouldn't be the first time I talk about and analyze this specific scene. I did that in my video dedicated to Haruka specifically. So go check that out after you finish watching this video, and make sure you subscribe too if you don't feel like watching another one of my videos right now and would rather do that later. Just for good measure. Getting back on track, I'm going to repeat almost verbatim what I said in the Haruka video. Haruka and Sayama start to talk about Kiryu and his relation to both of them, and Haruka reveals that she's taken notice of the fact that Kiryu has taken a liking to Sayama. She knows this because she's noticed that Kiryu acts differently around Sayama. She's noticed that Kiryu acts around Sayama the same way he acts around herself. He's more open and relaxed. He feels more free to be himself. That's everything that Haruka observes. And really, it's just further emphasis of the fact that Kiryu has fallen in love with Sayama. To put it bluntly, he should put a ring on it at this point. Skipping a bunch of cutscenes that are irrelevant to the topic of this video, we get to Yakuza 2's climax before its finale. There's a Millennium Tower scene where Kaoru, remember him? He's Sayama's soon-to-be-revealed biological father, and Sayama's adoptive mother are also present.
自分の娘の前で人を殺せるのかな。
待って。娘って誰のこと？まさか。
そう。あなたのことですよ。佐山薫さん。
あなたが私の父親なの？
違う。こっちへ来んな。
我々のボスだった男の女房ジョン・スヨンとこの男がひっついてであんたが生まれた。あんたの父親はこの河原二郎なんだよ。
黙るこの野郎。
河原さん。
河原。俺がこの26年間どれほど辛い思いをしても耐え忍んできたのはな。
So, Sayama's biological father is fatally shot, and as he's held in Sayama's arms, he reveals everything about the events that led up to her birth. And then he dies.
お前の手を握るのは俺の指を掴んで笑っていた時はちっちゃな手だったのに。俺と母さんの分まで幸せになるんだぞ。
お父さ
ん。ありがとう。な。
Now that was fucking intense, right? All of that dumped onto Sayama, and immediately after that, her biological father kicks the bucket. That's got to be beyond overwhelming, and they've still got some shit to do regarding this whole convoluted-ass conspiracy, right? But before they can do that, Kiryu needs to make something abundantly clear to Sayama.
どんな事実でも受け入れられると思ってた。でもあなたの言った通りよね。やっぱり辛くなっちゃった。でももうやるしかないのよね。
大丈夫だよ。
え
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, a good old-fashioned kiss scene. There's really not that much to talk about here aside from the fact that Kiryu just calcified their love. Which is interesting because now that I think of it, Kiryu is the one who's been really vocal about his attraction to her. Their romance is mutual and reciprocal, don't get me wrong. Sayama was literally butt naked in front of him, and she forced his ass to go to Osaka with her. But Kiryu is definitely the one shouting it from the rooftops, which makes sense given the fact that he was very reprehensive about confessing his love to his previous love interest, Yumi, until the moment before she died. So that's probably why he decided to be more rambunctious about it with Sayama. Wait a minute, I just realized that Kiryu fell in love with Sayama only a year after Yumi died. He really moved that fast, huh? Yeah, that definitely proves that she was a cardboard cutout of a character. Even Kiryu felt that way. So, before we continue talking about the romance between Kiryu and Sayama, I need to quickly tell you about who Ryuji Goda is. He's the main villain in Yakuza 2, and he's Sayama's half-brother. That's it. That's all I needed to clarify. Let's get back to the romance. After finding out that Ryuji is her half-brother and realizing that she still has one last surviving family member by blood, Sayama decides to try to approach Ryuji to talk him down from his violent mission to conquer Tokyo.
今の私にできることは、郷田隆二に全てを話し、この無駄な構想に終止符を打つこと。
Kiryu's obviously going to intervene after finding this out, and that sets the stage for the most stupid Yakuza finale of all time, and the finale of this romance, supposedly.
お前は用済みだ。なんてことをしてくれたんだ、このバカ野郎が。少しでも動いたら前技打ちますよ。龍二、男はのバカなくらいでちょうどええんや。
After all of that hilariously disastrous writing, that bomb is about to go off. And in their last moments, both Kiryu and Sayama are very horny, so they make out one last time. They don't make it past second base because they don't have the time, but mouth-to-mouth French kissing suffices nonetheless. This all happening while Haruka is in a helicopter watching them, by the way, but who gives a fuck when you're about to blow up? Oh, but it turns out it was all a ruse. And the camera pans to Sayama, Kiryu, and Haruka staring happily at the sky. Isn't that a happy ending to this romance? So what do we take away from this? Are Kiryu and Sayama really meant for each other? Is she a keeper? Is he a keeper? Do they actually gel well? Okay, that's too many fucking questions. Let's just get to the point. Sayama and Kiryu have very similar backstories. They have physical chemistry. Sayama inspires and excites Kiryu. Sayama reciprocates those feelings. But they live in two opposing worlds. But you know what they say, opposites attract sometimes. So this is the beginning of a series-long relationship, right? Sadly, no. In Yakuza 3, Sayama gets an offer to work in a police department in the United States of A. We see her one last time right at the aftermath of Yakuza 2's ending. They're still at the graveyard, and this is where we see Sayama reveal that she's going to America. So basically, yeah, they wrote her out of the story. Why? Weren't these two head over heels in love with each other? Fun fact, in an interview with Famitsu, Masayoshi Yokoyama talked about the initial idea he had for Yakuza 3's story, and it was both interesting and disappointing to read through. In response to a question regarding where he wanted to take Kiryu's story at the time, he said, quote, "That's right. Actually, when I was working on Yakuza 3, I thought about making a road trip story about Kiryu. After the incident in Yakuza 2, Sayama Kaoru left a tape for Kiryu, and it was Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind. Following the lyrics of the tape, you travel from Okinawa to Sapporo and discover a hidden secret. Something like that. As you know, that never came to fruition. I don't think I need to explain why it's absolutely heartbreaking that this wasn't Yakuza 3's story, because what his initial idea was is way, way better than the Yakuza 3 story we actually got. If they used this story instead, they wouldn't have had to write Sayama out of the series. Not to mention that the story is way more interesting and captivating than the Yakuza 3 story we actually got. Imagine how fun it would have been to play through that. But yeah, we have to deal with the end product we got. All things considered, how do we interpret what's essentially a retcon? Well, I guess you could say that he genuinely thought Sayama would return to Japan after her stint in America, but then I guess he just forgot about her after Yakuza 3. I don't know, man. Maybe he wasn't in love with her after all. It could be that he was just feeling horny after losing Yumi, and if I'm being honest, I don't blame him. In Yakuza 5, Kiryu was hiding. He needed to maintain a secret identity under the name Taichi Suzuki. It's been 6 years since his stint with Kaoru Sayama, so he hasn't felt the touch of a woman for a while, until Yakuza 5.
これでも俺なりに精一杯茨の道を歩いているつもりなんですよ。読んだよね。
ただいま。もうお湯沸かしっぱなしだよ。
But in this instance, Kiryu did not reciprocate the love he received. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mayumi Madarame. She keeps Kiryu company during his undercover stint in Fukuoka.
そういうことはやらなくていいっていつも言ってんだろ。
私がやりたくてやってるんだし、いいじゃない。
身の回りのことは自分でする。勝手なことはしないでくれ。
もう相変わらず釣れない人ね。ネクタイ曲がってる。はい、これでよし。あ、おかえり。
また来てたのか。
うん、今日は夕方までのシフトだったからね。
お前も自分の生活があるだろう。俺のことはほっといてくれていいんだぞ。
またその話？ねえ、私が来るのって迷惑？
いや、そうじゃない。いろいろと世話をしてもらって助かってるさ。
じゃあなんでそんなこと言うの？まさか他に好きな人ができたとか。
いや待て、そんなわけないだろ
う。だっておかしいじゃない、急にそんなこと言うなんて。
別におかしくはないさ。
むしろ恋人同士でもないのに半同棲みたいにしている今の方が不思議だろう。
だったら恋人同士になればいいんじゃない？私はいつでもいいけど。
すまない。今はまだ。
Basically, Kiryu is hiding in Fukuoka so his presence doesn't interfere with Haruka's idol career, and so he doesn't have to deal with Yakuza shit. But Daigo Dojima, being the caring nephew that he is, has to keep watch over him to make sure nothing crazy happens to him. But Daigo obviously can't do it himself. That would be too suspicious. So he asks Tadashi Madarame, a Yakuza patriarch in Fukuoka, to keep watch over Kiryu. Tadashi doesn't do it himself either, though, given the fact that he is bedridden, so he sends his daughter, Mayumi, instead. But Kiryu doesn't know anything about this arrangement in the beginning chapters of his story in Yakuza 5. So in those beginning chapters, he's really confused on as to why this woman, whom he met at a restaurant 6 months ago, has practically been living with him for 6 months. He appreciates everything that she does for him, but he would still prefer to be on his own and take care of himself. Here's the thing, though. Mayumi's caught feelings for Kiryu. She desperately wants to be in a relationship with Kiryu. I mean, she desperately throws herself at him.
Mayumi. どうしたんだお前。
半年も一緒にいてこういうこともなかったんだし、いいじゃない、たまには。
Sadly, she does that at the wrong moment because a few moments earlier, Kiryu found out the truth about her and why she's staying with him. She ultimately feels guilty for her betrayal and takes her to see her father, who explains that Daigo insisted that he watch over Kiryu and had Mayumi look after him. Before Kiryu leaves the room, Mayumi has some words for Kiryu.
Kiryu さん、私があなたを騙していたことは一生かけても償います。ですからどうか父の頼み引き受けてもらえませんか？
Which is basically code for I'd still let you hit 100 times over condomless if you want, because I really want that. Like, really, really want that.
結局俺は一人じゃなかった。一人になることなんかできなかった。理由はどうあれ、弱りきっていた俺のそばにこんないい女を置いてくれたこと、感謝している。絶対に青山の好きにはさせない。それだけは約束する。それじゃ。
すまんかったわい、まゆみ。
And that right there is what we call non-reciprocal love. Have you ever been in a situation like that, dear viewer? If you have, I feel for you, because that's got to be the worst feeling in the world, and the worst situation to be in. And if I'm not mistaken, love is a very intense feeling, a feeling that can take over you and consume you. I can't imagine what it's like to feel all of that, only to have the person you're in love with not feel the same way. On the contrary, I can't imagine what it's like to be on the receiving end of someone else's love, but you're the one that doesn't reciprocate, like Kiryu was. But we also have to ask ourselves this question: why didn't Kiryu like Mayumi? Well, we don't really get to know her that well, so I don't know if we can answer that question adequately. She's in quite a few cutscenes, but there's really not anything substantive about her character, aside from the fact that she's very kind, gentle, and a considerate person. But the answer to that question is still nonetheless obvious, I guess. Kiryu just wasn't interested in romantic relationships at the point of his life he was in Yakuza 5. He really just wanted to be alone. But he could have had sex with her at least. She literally threw herself at him. You're probably saying that to yourself, remembering that very, very, very awkward scene. And yeah, that may have been what you would do in that situation, but that's just not how Kiryu operates. He's practically voluntarily celibate, so even if an attractive woman signifies their attraction to him very loudly, he's not having it.
少し疲れてんな。
そしたらシャワーあるで。ついでに体も洗ったろか。その場合は追加料金やけどな。
そっちは間に合ってるが、シャワーは助かる。
せやろ。
ついでに腹も減ってんだ。
そしたらあれか。ご飯にする？お風呂にする？それともたし。
シャワーの後、飯食って寝る。あとは構わないでくれ。
ノリ悪いやんか、上流。
Really, Kiryu? I understand why you didn't like Mayumi, but Akame? You said no to her? Maybe you didn't like her personality. Kiryu will never beat the celibate and/or virgin allegations. Or will he? This is where the queen of the Jomi Jewel comes in, Song-hee, a leader of a notorious Korean criminal organization. She leads with an iron fist, but she has a softer and friendlier side too. She's an extremely skilled fighter and isn't afraid to get ruthless. She's also a bit of a tsundere. For those in the audience who don't know what that is, a tsundere is, and this is the Wikipedia definition, a Japanese term for a character development process that depicts a character with an initially harsh personality who gradually reveals a warmer, friendlier side over time. And that's exactly what happens with Song-hee after she meets Kiryu. In Yakuza Like a Dragon, the game she was introduced in, she doesn't reveal this side of her, but when Kiryu comes to town, she literally cannot hide the fact that she is head over heels for Kiryu. And unsurprisingly, Kiryu doesn't reciprocate. And this is probably the most egregious example of Kiryu fumbling the bag unnecessarily. They are both from the criminal underworld. The worlds they come from are the same. This is something they bond over, which is something Kiryu couldn't do with any of his previous romances, because all of them were either regular citizens or on the opposite side of the society he lived in. Now, you could give some grace to Kiryu in this situation. Why, you may ask? Well, it's revealed in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth that he has cancer. And because of that, you could say that he doesn't want to burden anyone he could potentially have a romantic relationship with the fact that he has cancer and is presumably gonna die soon. And that's not a bad argument, but I don't necessarily agree. He should live life to the fullest with those he cares about before he kicks the bucket. And that includes romantic relationships. If it's any consolation though, Kiryu does consider her a friend and helps her fight an insurrection against her organization.
おい、お前、ご苦労だった。助かったぞ。うちの組織にお前ほどの者がいたとはな。
女王のお役に立てて何よりでした。
顔を見せてくれないか。
申し訳ありませんが、それより早く怪我人の手当てをしないと。
さっきかぶっていたコミジュルの仮面はマスターから借りたのかな？
ん？さてな。何の話だ？
She was very adamant about the fact that she didn't want Kiryu to get involved in that debacle because she didn't want to worry him, but Kiryu, being the stubborn bastard that he is, does it anyway, solidifying that he may not have the same romantic feelings she has for him, but he still cares about her as a friend.
そうだ。せっかく綺麗な眺めだ。写真でもどうだ。俺が撮ってやるよ。
写真か。確かにここで撮ったことなどなかったな。ねは、せっかくと言うなら桐生さんもどうだ？まあ無理にとは言わんが。
俺もか？では二人で撮るとしよう。
ありがとう桐生さん。
So what's next for the Dragon of Dojima when it comes to romance? He only spent like 5 minutes with his first love interest, Yumi, who's barely a character. Sayama was low-key the love of his life. Someone who's very similar to him presented him an opportunity for a relationship. It seems that women regularly throw themselves at him. So is he ever going to find someone to accompany him on the road trip that is life? Well, I'm happy to say that the answer to that question is actually uncertain. You were probably thinking he was going to die alone, especially considering the fact that in Infinite Wealth he has cancer. But in the post-credit scene of that game, it's revealed that he's getting treatment for his cancer. So Kiryu's future isn't completely bleak. To add on to that, Sayama returns to Japan in Infinite Wealth. And she doesn't have a ring on her finger.
今は警察官としての新しい夢を追いかけてる最中なんです。だからそっちに全力で行きたいっていう気持ちなんですけど、どこかでまだあの人を待ってるのかも。一途でいい女だと思います？
な佐山、実は。
いいんだ、だってさ。いいんだ。
Well, that's a missed opportunity. Maybe he'll change his mind when he's done with his cancer treatment. Because honestly, Kiryu needs to stop being a stubborn son of a gun and actually be happy for once.